Hey everybody, welcome back to another tutorial, and today I am looking at the new apeSoft app, Electric Vintage, which is a really nice sounding electric piano. Basically sounds like a Fender Rhodes, but being apeSoft, we've got tons of different effects we can apply, right? We got 2 pages of effects here, and later I'm going to go through those. And as you can see from this knob here that's moving, we've also got the classic apeSoft modulation options, tons of great stuff we can do with LFOs. Basically everything here is automatable. This is one of the greatest features of apeSoft apps. Anyway, let me just play a couple of bars of something to let you hear it here. So, sounding lovely. That is a very simple little patch with just a little bit of delay on it and a tiny little bit of tremolo as well. Now, by the way, Alessandro is offering some codes for this, and you can see the details in the comments section. And I also have a code to give away for Atmosphere Cloud Reverb, which I've talked about in a video before. Blue Mangoo have been nice enough to give me some codes for that, so I'll be giving those away maybe over the next few videos if I happen to be using this in them. So just right now, I'm just going to say, how can you get a chance to win a copy of Atmosphere Cloud Reverb? What the few chords that I played there, you write in the comments section what song those come from. I'm playing it a bit slower than the original, quite a lot slower actually. But yeah, if you can recognize what song those chords come from, write it in the comments section, and the first person to get the right answer will get a free copy of Atmosphere Cloud Reverb. All right. So thanks to Blue Mangoo for that. Anyway, let's get back to the main point of today's tutorial, which is the apeSoft Electric Vintage. And let me explain first how we're going to do things here. So first, I'm going to go through the way the app is organized, as usual, and try to fairly thoroughly look at the different effects and what they do, so you can really get, a good idea of whether you think this app would be something that would appeal to you. Try and be pretty thorough. But apeSoft apps are quite deep, and I have done a few apeSoft and Amazing Noises apps before. Amazing Noises are very similar in their layout and functions to apeSoft apps. So I won't go into things like the LFOs and stuff that I just mentioned. You can watch some of my other videos, like my video on Stria, for example, that's an apeSoft app, and my videos on Mobius Lab. I've got 2 videos on that. So you can find some of that stuff in those. And anyway, so I'll just concentrate on some of the other more specific features of this, right? The first thing that I'm going to do is go through a few presets. Then I'll go through the different effects. And then towards the end of the tutorial, I just want to explain now the way I'm organizing this today. Towards the end of the tutorial, in one of my recent videos on piano motifs, I looked at how to set up some MIDI utilities and play instruments using those. And I didn't show the routing of that. So towards the end of today's session, I'm also going to look at that. How do we actually route MIDI, especially when we're chaining several MIDI apps together. So I kind of had a viewer request about that, so I decided to put a little bit about that in this video. And yeah, I'm also just going to mention briefly as well later this Sensual Sax app, which is really quite a nice little combo, I think, with this Rhodes. Okay, so back to the electric piano here. So let's look first of all at some of the cool features we've got here. Okay, so first thing, we can turn it on and off here. You can do the same, I believe, oh no, you can't do that in the standalone, right? Yeah, you can do that though sorry, you can't do it in the audio unit, but you can do that in the standalone. So that might be nice if you're playing around, but it's kind of taking up some power and you want to go and do something else, and you don't want your CPU to be getting used up too much. So you've got this on and off switch here. And then we've got the preset menus, and I'm not going to go into this except to mention that there's a cool feature here, which is this create random sound. So that's the first thing I want to look at. So here we have this sound. Now, there's an important button here, this critical parameters button. So first I'm going to randomize with that deselected and let you hear what that's like. Okay, we've got a bit of delay sound there that's, going to calm down in a second. We do another one. So we got a lot of distortion in this one. Now imagine you think, okay, I want to randomize this, but I think it's a bit too much. Then you can use this. Oh, sorry, that's the back button. Yeah. So if we don't like this preset, we can go back to the last one. Really, really happy this has a back button. That's very useful. Okay, if we want to sort of tone things down a little bit, we can use this. You see here we have a little downwards pointing button, and over here we have an upwards pointing button. So look at some knobs while I press this button and have a listen. Do you see it's turning the knobs down? But I don't know if you noticed, look at this one. Let me press this button a few more times and watch this rate knob. So you see it's going down, and I keep pressing the button, and eventually it comes back up to the top again because it has nowhere left to go, right? So they work in a kind of cycle. So this button sort of tones things down, and this one ramps them up in terms of just the positions of the knobs, right? And we can adjust the amount of randomness here. So we can get just small changes, subtle, or we can get big changes. And if we click the critical parameters button, then even very important parameters like main level will be changed. So this is going to produce maybe a lot of sounds that you won't like, perhaps, or that won't be very usable, but you might find something really original and interesting using that. Okay, but for now, let me just go back to that preset that we just had. Right. Now, let me just play through some of the factory presets. So this app is done in collaboration with P-Sound. So I can just browse through them using the arrows here. Bit of a harder sound here. Like that. So this has some slicer. That's one of the cool effects. We'll talk about that later. And so you see here we've got something a little bit pad-like. So we could look at the envelope here. You can see that it's got a reasonably slow attack and a fairly long release and stuff. Oh, Sorry. So you can hear a bit of wah-wah and stuff there. Quite a lot going on there, actually. Some nice panning effects. A lot of tremolo. So I think the phaser here is doing some pretty crazy stuff maybe, and the chorus as well, if we look, feedback's quite high. I like this one. Very Boards of Canada. Here we're hearing the slicer again. Now this one is pretty cool. Got maybe some sort of detune effect or something with the chorus here. Oh, this is nice. You can see the chorus being modulated here. This one has a lot of sustain on it. Nice delicate one. Again, a lot of phaser. Very sort of Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy vibe I'm getting from this. And this. A little bit sort of no quarter. Here you can hear the stereo delay. Distortion. But only at harder velocities. If you play softer, It's just got a little. And then as I play harder, it's getting much more distorted. And this is the one I used at the start. Okay, so some great sounding presets there. Gives you an idea of how versatile this thing is. So let's look at it then. First, I think we should start with the envelope here. Now, this was a feature that was added during beta, I think, at user request, which is great. Okay, you've got to love developers who listen to people. So here we're getting a nice slow attack, but we need to maybe right. So got control over envelopes here. And again, you can turn that on and off here. Okay, now here we have the main level. Here we can adjust the pitch. If you're playing along with something that's not in standard pitch, for example. And if you click this, it will just immediately go back to the default pitch. There's a release here which is different from the release in the envelope. We need to turn the delay off or something to hear that properly. Now over here we have some velocity control, and this is related to the on-screen keyboard. So with this turned off, anywhere I press on a note, the velocity will be the same. With velocity on, we now have velocity sensitivity. Down here is louder, here is quieter, and we can adjust the nature of the transition from quiet to loud. So here we have linear transition, and here logarithmic, which basically means that the difference is going to get bigger the further up the key we get. Down here we'll not notice the difference. Or sorry, no, yeah. Down here, each like centimeter, for example, we go up, is going to have a bigger effect. And up here, it's going to have a lesser effect. And then here we have an exponential curve, which will work the opposite. As we go up, we'll notice bigger changes. Okay, so that's how the velocity works. All right, now let's look at the effects. So as I said earlier, we have 2 pages of effects. So now we're looking at page 1. So we have an EQ here. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. And mono and stereo choice here. Now over here we have the slicer, which is one of the cool effects that I mentioned earlier. Now here we can sync to host, or we can keep it free and have our times in milliseconds. So slicer basically resamples slices of the signal, and we can control how many slices we get. With the repeat button, we control the delay time for the slices with this phrase knob, and the amount over here. And here we control whether the slices go forwards, backwards, or randomly forwards and backwards. And here we can adjust, here we can reduce the sort of clipping sounds that we might get. So let's hear what this sounds like. So we need to turn it on by using this. So let's hear if we put a long see the long delay time, it takes a very long time before the slice sounds start coming in. If we put it down here, we're going to get them straight away. And if we have a lot of repeats, we start to get kind of tonal changes as well, pitch changes. So this is capable of some very experimental stuff. Let's find one of the patches that uses the slicer. Pretty cool. So you see, if we don't have the triangle selected, we get this clipping sort of sound, which you might want, of course, which is why the option's here. And you might want something really kind of glitchy. Okay, so that's the slicer. And then here we have a chorus. Let's find an effect, or let's find a preset that has chorus. Let me just turn off some of the other effects on it maybe so we can hear clearly. Turn off the wah-wah, delay, distortion. I'll keep the reverb on. Okay. So you can see we can get pretty freaky with the chorus. Or we can just have it as a simple chorus effect. So this also does flange. Okay, so that's chorus. Then we have the phaser. Let's find a preset. Whoa, that one's a bit heavy. So you can see here that the rate is being modulated by the internal LFOs. I discussed that in, I think, my second video on Mobius Lab. I looked at how to use these control panels or whatever in apeSoft and Amazing Noises apps in detail, so you can take a look at that. Mobius Lab Part 2. So we control the rate, different shapes. The depth, the offset, so that's affecting the phase of the waveforms. Come in through the filters. And so here we're controlling the number of filters that it passes through. So again, this is one you can get quite experimental with. Okay, level, mix is clear enough. Okay, what else we got? Page 2. Page 2. The wah-wah. Let's find one with wah-wah. Here we go. So again, the rate is being modulated automatically by an LFO. Depth. So this auto wah. Okay, simple enough. stereo delay. Let's maybe turn the mix up, the level. So if you're wearing headphones, you can hear pretty clearly a kind of ping pong thing going on. Feedback, pretty self-explanatory. Okay, reverb. I think pretty much all the patches have reverb, so we can control the decay amount, higher decay levels, longer reverb, damp, mix. You can control vintage and modern. I think I prefer the modern one. Okay, then next we have distortion. Oops. So again, velocity makes a big difference. And pre-gain is the level of the signal going into the distortion, and we can change the shape of the, we can, change the, I don't really actually understand this one very well, I must admit. So change the positive shape and the negative shape of the distortion. Let's see, I mean, I also don't really hear very much, to be honest, when I play around with these. Anyway, if someone understands it better than me, feel free to say something about it in the comments. Now this one is very important. You want a lot of distortion. Play around with these gains and amount over here. And again, don't forget every time, you always need to check, have you got these things turned on or not? Right, so that is the standalone. I'm just going to close it and go into AUM here. And let's see what's going on here. Connected. Okay. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I want to explain, for the sake of some viewers who didn't really get it, in the video I did on piano motifs, where I linked a bunch of MIDI utilities together. So I want to look at how I've done it here. So first, let me just play. So what we've got is two instances of electric vintage. They're both going through the atmosphere cloud reverb, which I mentioned and which I also looked at in detail in, what was it, maybe my segments tutorial or something? Can't remember, I'll put a link above. Okay, so what is playing the first instance here? It is this Atom piano roll. Okay, so I want to connect Atom piano roll, which is here, which is producing MIDI, to that. And I just click on the hamburger menu and choose Atom piano roll. Okay, now this one, you can hear there's a bit more going on. So what's happening here? Let's look at the way the chain is for this. So you can see that it is receiving MIDI from Rozeta Scaler. Okay, and now let's look at Rozeta Scaler. That is getting its MIDI from Midi Echo. This is Midi Echo here. Midi Echo is producing these echoes that we can hear. And Midi Echo is getting its MIDI from the same instance of piano roll, right? So exactly the same MIDI going in here. This was just a few notes that I played on the keyboard, right, by triggering just this little keyboard button here. And I played those notes in as a loop. And so basically this is working as a MIDI looper here for me. So why run it through Midi Echo? Well, Midi Echo is giving it the echoes. Here I have turned the through off, so in this instance we're only getting the echoes, which are pitched. We're not actually getting any of these notes, we're just hearing the echoes of the notes. It's a really nice feature of this. And we can change the number of echoes and things. And as I mentioned in the previous video, why am I using Scaler? I'm using it to keep the echoes in the right scale and key. So I've really been enjoying playing along on Sensual Sax with this. Let you just hear a little bit of this app. Now this is with the sex mode off. It gets a lot more interesting when we turn the sex up to 11. Then we get really kind of Kenny G. So that is Sensual Sax. It's actually quite tricky to play. I haven't really been using this app much recently. You know, when you're playing, you need to have different sort of playing techniques for these different modes. So it is something that, yeah, you need to work on your technique with a little bit. So forgive me if my playing was not mind-blowingly brilliant there. Really nice sounding though. It's a lot easier to play when the sex level is turned down. And funnily enough, they also have what they call a love mode in the settings, so you can go and experiment with that. All right, everybody, so don't forget that you can win codes for this. So I mentioned that near the beginning of the video. You can go back there and have a listen to that. And take a look at the comments section for details. And please do remember, even if you don't want to win a code or whatever, I'll really appreciate it if you give this a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Click the bell if you want updates. And write a comment. You know, I usually reply to comments. If you have any questions, anything interesting you'd like to say, please put it below. And hope you enjoyed this. And I'll see you in the next tutorial. Take it easy, guys.